Part of our management responsibility in this management area is the Red River from Moorhead to East Grand Forks. And so every 5 years or so, we'll run a monitoring assessment of the fish populations on the river, and we'll use trap nets, trot lines, and electric fishing. And the part that you're looking at is the trap net and trot line portions of the sampling. Part of our responsibility for management is to know what those populations look like, whether or not they're trending upward or downward. It speaks well to the habitat in the river, or it speaks about the habitat in the river. If numbers are up, if they're doing well, if it's a really robust population, then things are going well with the habitat. And we've done a lot of habitat projects on the river. We've modified many of the dams in the river. And I think the numbers of fish that we're seeing are likely there partly because of the dam modifications that have gone on along the main stem of the Red. In the past, when the fish moved downstream of the dams, they weren't able to get back upstream except for in flood conditions. And now they're able to do that any time of the year. And so they're able to use the entire length of the Red River now. And we've got stronger populations of catfish further south or further upstream than we've ever seen in the past. We've got about 30 trap net sets between Fargo-Moorhead and East Grand Forks. We set them along snags along the edges of the river, and they're overnight sets. The fish swim up into the traps, can't get out. We come back the next day. We can measure and weigh and take a spine off these fish to age them, and so that's what you're observing in this sampling. The pectoral spine is taken so that we can age these catfish. We know how fast they're growing, our growth rate's changing. It's a common practice to take a bony structure on a fish in order to age it. And on a scaled fish, for example, we can just scrape a few scales off. Or on a walleye, we can clip a dorsal spine. But on a catfish, they don't have scales, and the most readily available bony structure is that pectoral spine. And so we snap that off and section it, and we're able to age the fish, and that heals over on the fish. Within a fairly short period of time, that'll be healed up. In fact, we catch fish in our sampling from previous years that we notice the spines are missing from one side, and we know we've sampled that fish in the past. We had a really excellent sample this year. The population of catfish in the river seems to be pretty high. It's much higher than it was in 2000. We do this survey every 5 years. And we had, on average, 50 cats per trap this sampling period, whereas in 2000, I believe we had 7.5 cats per trap. So the population, the numbers-wise, appears to be a lot higher, and the size of the fish that we're catching appears to be a lot higher. We caught fish all the way from 5 inches up to near 40 inches in length. So catfish, channel catfish that weigh between a fraction of a pound to well over 20 pounds were captured in the survey.
840.
A trot line is a strong cord or line with a series of dropper lines hanging off of it every so many feet. And there's a hook that's baited at the end of that dropper line. And that's just simply another method of sampling fish. In the downstream portions, in the northern portions of the Red River, the population of catfish tends to be larger sized on average. It's a larger river, so it holds larger catfish. And they tend to sample catfish better on trot lines there, or the larger catfish better on trot lines. On the upstream reaches or the southern reaches of the river near Fargo-Moorhead, they're somewhat smaller catfish. It's a smaller river, and I think our trap nets actually outperform. But to stay consistent across the whole survey, from the Canadian border all the way up to Breckenridge, we use the same type of gear from one end of the river to the other. So it's just another means of getting an index of abundance. We'll get an average number of catfish per trap net, or we'll get an average number of catfish per trot line per survey, and we can compare survey to see if the population is moving up, moving down, staying the same. And we may use it also to adjust regulations on the river as needed. These are natural populations, they aren't stocked, so we're not using it to adjust our stocking. We're using them to manage these natural populations, to gauge habitat and to gauge recreation, what's available to anglers out there. Catfish are the dominant species that we're finding in the survey. They by far outnumber everything else we're sampling in our traps. And we catch them almost exclusively in our trout lines. And other species we do see are walleye and sauger, goldeyes, booneyes. Freshwater drum are probably the second most abundant species. We see numerous red horse species, but it's a catfish-dominated fish community. I'd have to say that it's probably an underutilized resource. People are catching on that it's a tremendous catfish fishery, but I don't think they really understand it's really a world-class channel catfish fishery.